you bear with me 1 minute, I'm about to click the button. So I have clicked it. We are now live. So welcome to the ACUZ training. We've got with us Mr. Daka, who's going to give us an introduction to Global Gap. Mr. Daka is a member of the Lusaka Avocado Multipurpose Cooperative. Some of you might be members of LAMCS. You're very welcome. This training is for ACUZ, therefore all other cooperatives will be able to join into this training. If you have any questions, please do contact myself or Engineer MUTIMUSHI, and we'll be able to make any responses, or Engineer Chiwala. Thank you so much, Chairman Chiwala, for joining us. I appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And then over to you, Mr. Daka. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mrs. Kalinda. Just checking. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. And I'm going to go on mute now. Thank you.
All right. Can you see my screen as well?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right. Perfect. Thank you very much. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to this presentation. My name is Mr. Alifasi Daka, as Mrs. Kalinda said, and I'm here to introduce us to Global Gap. What is it, and why we should care about it. So just a little bit about myself. I am a member of the Lusaka Avocado Cooperative, and I'm the chair for the technical committee. I'm also an avocado farmer, up and coming, and I also farm goats. So I'm sharing pictures here. These are pictures from a farm that's in operation. It's been up and running for 2 years now. We're now a second year. So those are 2-year-old trees in the background, and a few of our goats and sunflower, and that's myself at the bottom there. So getting into it, the objective tonight is basically I would like us to walk away with 4 things: understanding what Global Gap is, why we should pay attention, why we should care about it, and what are the options for farmers to get certified in terms of Global Gap. And hopefully walking away from here, we should all be clear on what we are doing next about it. That's the idea here. So let's get on with it. And just a disclaimer, because it's an introduction, you will not walk away here and saying I'm an expert, but you will walk away saying I know enough to know what I'm doing next and how I'll go about doing it. So for a start, what is Global Gap? So essentially, Global Gap, it's an assurance framework. It's an international assurance framework that started in Europe, and it really has several goals. The most important being protecting the consumers. So the people who are going to consume what we're producing. In this case, we're avocados. It's there to make sure that the requirements of the avocado consumers in the world, or wherever we're supplying, are being met. The food is safe. If there's a problem, it can be traced. There are no chemicals. It's not going to harm them. And of course, we also live in a wider circle of concerns that include the environment, our social responsibilities, making sure that our workers are working in a safe environment, and that everybody essentially it's about doing agriculture and business in a responsible manner, so that you're going there achieving your goals as an agriculture business, but you're also not destroying the planet or harming people. Put that together, that's how I essentially would summarize what Global Gap is. So a little bit on that, in terms of how they actually spell it out in the standard. So they'll call out several areas that include food safety, making sure things are traceable. When we think of sustainable farming, they'll be looking at, they'll like to see how, as you are doing a farming operation, how are you going about doing your fertilizers? Are you harming the environment as you're doing that? They try to look at things like your workers. Are they safe? Are you providing them with what they need to work safely? So that's an example of the focus areas. And it comes down to 5 key areas that all that gets packaged as. And it's really food safety, production processes, end to end, from the time the produce is on the farm, what's the production process there, all the way to where it lands on in that grocery store, where the customer is actually going to buy that avocado. And of course, environmental sustainability, we want to make sure as we are producing these things, we are not killing the environment. We need to leave it nice and safe so that our grandkids and their kids can still benefit from what we're doing here. And of course, workers' well-being, it's important that the people who work for us are doing so in a safe manner, that we're supporting them, we're paying them, we're providing safe equipment for them. And then, of course, the legal and management aspect of your business, because this is really farming as a business. So it looks at, are you registered with PACRA, for example? Are you in compliance with the laws of the land as you are going about this business? So Global Gap tries to cover that. And so we said Global Gap because that's the body. But in terms of the actual framework they use, they call it UCIFA. That's Integrated Farm Assurance Program. So that's the actual certification program that they use. And there's been several versions of this. We are at version 6 as of now. I'll be talking a little bit about that as we go. So there's 2 sides to this story. There's all this, you have to be in compliance so that basically if you want to export, for example, into Europe, the market demands that you show that you're certified by Global Gap. Otherwise, a lot of the market will not accept your avocados. It's as simple as that. Then there's also, so apart from that, there's benefits to you as a farmer, as a farming business, that you're going to improve the efficiency, for example, of your farm, because a lot of the things that are in this standard that you have to align to, when you start to look at them, they're actually good things. They are going to help you as well in the long run. So it's not just about trying to satisfy the requirement, but it's also that you're also going to get a lot of benefits as the farming business. All right. In addition, we all care about the Sustainable Development Goals set by the UN. So by aligning to the Global Gap standard, you're directly supporting, goal number 3, 8, 12, 15, and 17 of the SDGs. So that's another good thing to keep in mind as you go, among other things. So how do they actually enforce this? So basically, if I want to export my avocados to Europe or North America or wherever, and they've signed up to Global Gap, there's a system, the Global Gap APIT system. This is where they publish. So if Mr. Daka's farm gets certified, you will have an entry in this system that shows that I've been certified and when it's going to expire, and or additional information to go with that. So if I'm trying to get into a market, if they don't ask for it, or whether I give them or not, they'll come into this system that all the supply chains that are dealing with farm produce use across the world. They'll look up my business, my company in this system to see my Global Gap certification status. And, a lot of them will blankly say, if you're not here, don't even call me. I'm not interested. Or they want to hear when we're going to be certified. It's as simple as that when it comes to accessing the international market for avocados. So, as with many things, global gaps sometimes can be very daunting. It can look like it's very big, lots of information, lots of things that come into play. But the way I like to see it is kind of, like peeling the layers in an onion and mapping a path through, like a complicated avocado orchard, which has many trees. If you've got the path, you will navigate that. So what I've done here is just to give us kind of the path, starting from, we say global gap, what's in play, and bring it right down to what does it mean for me? What's the option? What are the paths available? So, as I said, we have the Integrated Farming Assurance program that Global Gap runs, and they have different versions. Until last year, they were at version 5. And as of September of 2022, they introduced version 6. And the number of things that have come in version 6, including things like biodiversity that they'll want to see compliant farmers aligned to. But essentially, when you go into Global Gap, so for us in Zambia, we're just getting started. It makes sense to say, for the most part, ignore version 5. And if some of you have already started and you are on your path to align with the version 5, you might as well switch to and start aligning with version 6, because next year, version 5 will be totally out of the picture. So they gave some time for that to transition over to version 6. The other thing, once you zoom in, okay, I'll pick version 6, what now? Global Gap covers more than, I know we care about avocados, but it covers essentially everything that comes from a farm that's going to end up on a consumer's plate. So they'll cover livestock, aquaculture, plants, and within plants, they have tea, they have fruits and vegetables where we are, they have combinable crops, they have flowers, and other things there. So I didn't include everything here just to not make the picture too big. So obviously, we are avocado farmers here. Our path would take us to the fruits and vegetables path. So it brings us to two options there. So Global Gap supports what they call option 1 and option 2. So option 1 is you go as the individual farmer. So it's, I'm Mr. Daka, I have Tawaya Farms. I'll get this certification in my capacity as Tawaya Farms. And in that system, it will show that it's Tawaya Farms. I'll go with this option if I'm planning on essentially exporting avocados just as my farm, as an individual. I'm not working through any cooperative. I'm just working directly with the people I'm exporting to. That would be the option to go with. And I'll talk about, and if you go with that option, the idea of a quality management system is optional. I'll talk a little bit about what I mean by that. The second option is for the producer groups. So this would be similar to a cooperative like our cooperative in the Lusaka Avocado Cooperative. So the cooperative would be the producer group, and it would get the Global Gap certification as a producer group. And what that means is it essentially has to put what they call a quality management system, which would be the set of standards and processes and criteria that Lusaka Avocado, for example, would have to make sure that all the farmers that are taking part and are part of that certified group are going to align to. and make sure that they're in compliance with our quality management system. And once that's in place, then the group would go through the Global GAP certification process, and they would own that Global GAP certificate. So now what that means is, in terms of exporting, it means it would be that group that's doing the exporting and working with the outside market. It wouldn't be the individual farmers. So for example, if Mr. Daka was part of the Lusaka avocado, wants to sell his avocados, they would have to come in and be branded as Lusaka Cooperative Avocados. And that's how essentially they'll get exported. So the advantages and disadvantages to these two options, and as we go, I'll talk about that a little bit more, cost being one of them, especially for smaller players. So option one is what most of the large producers and big commercial farmers would use, but it's a lot more expensive than option two, where you go in as a group. Okay, so this is just the view from Global GAP, showing the timeline for version 5 versus version 6, as I shared. So for those that were on version 5, they have up to, when is that? December 2024. So December of next year is when they do the last recognition for version 5, and they expect everybody to be on version 6 of the IFA standard. Okay, so zooming in a little bit more, and basically there are 191 principles, as they call them, that you have to align to. And these principles are categorized in terms of major, minor, and a recommendation. And essentially, as you'd predict, the ones that are marked as major, they expect that, this is very important that you align with it for it to be certified. So they expect you to be in full compliance with them. And the ones that are marked as minor, if there are not too many of them, they do have the thresholds for it to be certified. So on the minor ones, you might not need to be 100% in compliance. And then there are recommendations. So recommendations, again, they won't affect your certification, but it's a good practice. Essentially, they'll tell you this is, and once we get in, you can see that it makes sense. It's just, it's a nice to have, but definitely a beneficial thing to do for your farm. And as I said before, these are broken down in terms of food safety. There's 43 or 44, workers' well-being, 22 of them, production process, 33, legal management and traceability, 23, and environmental sustainability, 69 principles that are out there in the standard that we have to consider to be certified. And this gives a bit more details in terms of the principles and the areas that they cover. So for some of these we mentioned already: food safety, biodiversity is a new one that came in as part of the version 6. Waste management, how you're dealing with waste on your production, water management, management of your overall production process, traceability of the products, energy efficiency. So, they favor trying to use renewable energies as much as possible. Fertilizers and biostimulants. So how are you going about nourishing your avocado and other produce on the farm, and how are you going about it so that it's not to the detriment of the environment? Then pest management, for those that are part of avocado, I believe Mr. Mshibwe was just presenting pest management just yesterday. So you can see how whatever he taught there ties right into here. He adopted a lot of what he was teaching there, and you see that it will benefit you when it comes to global GAP certification. Plant protection products, workers' health, I talked about already. Hygiene, this is where they go into things like you want to make sure your people are washing hands before they are packing those avocados. There's running water. There's people can wash those avocados, and you're looking at is that water clean? If somebody's sick, they shouldn't be forced to work, and so on and so forth. And of course, traceability. This is where, that avocado might be in a supermarket in London, in one section of London. If there was something wrong with it, it needs to be traceable all the way to say, yeah, this came from Mr. Daka's farm. You want to have such a system in place. All right, so I guess this is just a table summary of what I talked about, kind of in table form. So once we share this after, you can have a read through. So this is an example where, like once we actually get the criteria and the standards, how do you make sure you're in alignment? And this is an example for food safety. You will see there'll be a checklist where you have to go and say, yeah, I've seen evidence that shows that there's a continuous improvement plan in place. We'd say, what does that mean? And again, this is new in version 6. This shows that everybody, we want to say, to stay in compliance with this certification, you want to demonstrate and prove that you're going to continuously improve your operation, your employees, you're going to be training them, you're going to be doing lessons learned each time. So you're tweaking and making improvements every single time. They call out, for example, treated water is used during harvest or post-harvest, and you're monitoring that. You're testing it and things like that. Just put that out there as an example. Here's another example, environmental sustainability, because this has become a big deal. So the standard is going to demand that in our farming operations, you're able to show that biodiversity is managed and supported through metrics. So you're able to measure. So for example, I can give you an example from our farm. We've put buffer zones where we've said in here, we're going to maintain the natural trees. Don't cut them. And, we might put bees and beehives in there. But that's an example where if you demonstrate that, you put a section where you're going to try and maintain the natural state and even improve it, it shows that you're keeping that environment and that farm in a much healthier state for a longer period. You look at things like plastics. Again, I can give you examples from our farm where we've had to call out our employees to say, no littering, please, because, sometimes you just have people toss the plastics all over the place. And of course, that's not good in the long term. So the standard is going to be demanding more and more that, as we talk more about sustainability and climate change and these things, that you're going to show more and more that you're aligning and doing good agriculture practices essentially in your operation. And again, another call out here, straight from what Mr. Mshibwe was presenting yesterday. You want to show that you've got an integrated pest management system. It will demand that how you manage your weeds and so on and so forth. Workers' well-being, another one that's increasingly important. You want to make sure they have PPEs. So in the checklist that go with it, you find there are things like, if I translate to our Zambian context, would be putting things like, do your workers have gumboots? Do they have work suits or overalls? Do they have gloves? When you ask them to go and spray chemicals on your plants, do they have the mask to put on their head and so on and so forth, or their face? You want to show that. And do they know, for example, are your workers aware that if they feel what you're asking them to do is not safe, that they have the right to say, no, this is not safe for me to do. So you want to demonstrate that. And a lot of all these things I'm saying, it'll become clear, I guess, as we go. It'll come down to record keeping. You have to demonstrate through your records, through your documentation for your farm, that you're in alignment with these things. All right. So having said kind of what global gap is, what are the key things to consider? Shift us into basically focusing on how do I get certified. Let's see. Let's make sure. All right, let's see. So how do we get certified? Essentially, to be global certified requires 5 steps. And those 5 steps, the only difference would be whether we're going with option 1, where we're the individual, or option 2, where we are a producer group, like a cooperative. So the first one is essentially going to the Global Gap website, which time permitting, I'll demonstrate, I'll show. You can go there. A lot of this documentation is there on the website. So you get the general regulations and principles and criteria that apply to you. And for us, because we're avocado, we'd go and get the one that's for fruit and vegetables. And basically, you now, from that, you get, you go to step 2, start implementing what the standard calls out. For example, again, I'll pick the worker well-being as an example because I just talked about it. If today in our operation, we don't bother about giving workers their gumboots and work suits and all these things, we start as an example. Now we give them that and make sure there's water and they have good housing and things like that. And, you know, we start to align with the many different standards. Once we feel that, you know, we've gone through and we've set things up and we think we're in a pretty good shape, we're ready for somebody to come and take a look and see if they could give us a certificate. And by the way, they expect you to maintain records for a minimum of 3 months. So basically, if you want to be certified 3 months from now, the record keeping should start now, essentially. Because the auditors and the certification bodies who will come to see if you're in compliance, they'll have to see some of your records going back a minimum of 3 months. So once you're ready, you contact an approved certification body. And these are broken down by region and country. And as of now, I'll talk about it on the next slide. As of today, in 2023, we don't have a certification body in Zambia that's today is registered with Global Gap. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that. But essentially, you'd contact them and say, you know, I'm ready. I would like somebody to inspect so that I could get this Global Gap certificate. The certification body would send an auditor to your farm on site. If you have multiple locations, they'll inspect not all of them. If you have multiple locations, they have a formula they use where they inspect some like 10%, or sometimes they do the square root. They have a formula there. But the point is, if you have multiple sites, they won't inspect all of them. They'll inspect a subset of them, and that will be representative of all of them. So once they inspect, what's supposed to happen now is if they find areas where you're not compliant with the standard, they would document that, give it to you, and they would also enter that information in the global gap system. And you have a month, to be exact, 28 days for you to act on them. And once you've acted on them, you tell them that you're in compliance. They'll verify that you're now in compliance. And at that point, your certificate would go through, and they'll publish that in the global gap systems. And when you get that certification, it's valid for 1 year. So it'd be good for 1 year. And once you get it the first time, the good thing is, and hopefully, not hopefully, once you get it, you have to essentially keep being in compliance all the time. It doesn't mean you do it just to get the certificate and then you throw away the good practice. The whole point is for you to put that into your operation. So in the subsequent years, they'll do an annual audit on you, and they have 2 types of audits. There's one that's announced, where they actually give you a heads up and say, we're coming to check on this farm, on this thing, 2 months from now, and that way you can prepare. That's the one type. The other one is unannounced, because again, the idea is for you to be in compliance every time, not just for the sake of getting the certificate. So they're able to come in unannounced and do an inspection. And if you're not in compliance, they'll do the same thing they would have done in step 4. They would highlight the things that you're not in compliance with and give you 28 days to remediate. And they record all that. So if they find that they're catching you with lots of things that you're not in compliance with, that would affect your overall certification and things like that. Okay. So I talked about certification bodies. So these are companies that are not part of the global gap as a company, but they are connected. So I can open a business and register with global gap and with an accreditation body, which they have on their website. So we could go and look which ones are available near to us. And basically, those are the ones you go through and work through to get your inspection done, and they're able to enter that information in the global gap system. And then global gap issues you the certificate. So all this, of course, is not free. There are costs involved with this. So there's, of course, the first cost to you is what you will have to do on your farm to just be in alignment with the requirements. So, once you get through that checklist, everything you have to do there, buying stuff, buying PPE for your employees, ensuring there's water, ensuring you can keep records and things like that, there's that cost. That'll be direct cost to you. And then there's the certification bodies who will have to come to your farm and do inspections and do all that. They'll charge you fees, and those fees are independent from what the Global Gap is going to charge, because they're independent. So Global Gap doesn't tell them what to charge you. It's up to them. It's their business. And then thirdly, it's the system participation fee And this is the one that you pay to Global Gap itself. And they charge in euros, and it's dependent on the size of the land that you're producing on. So I'll show a table that highlights that. On the right side of my slide, you see I call out this, that currently, and I've been informed that I think last year there might have been a Zambian player in the system that was registered as a certification body in the Global Gap system. But when I looked up, as of now, this year, there's nothing from Zambia. The nearest certification bodies we have are in Zimbabwe, South Africa, or Kenya. So what that means is, if I'm ready to be inspected today, I have to contact one of these companies that Global Gap is already working with, and arrange with them to have an auditor come and inspect my farm. So the good thing is, in the case where we don't have one in Zambia, there's nothing stopping Mr. Daka making an arrangement with that company in Zimbabwe or Kenya. And, you know, if I receive the applicable training and I can do an audit properly on behalf of that company, they do make those arrangements. So even without a certification body, you could have the company in Zambia send their representative to audit your farm, and you still get that Global Gap certification. The other thing is, these certification bodies have to be accredited with a company that has signed, an organization or body that has signed a memorandum of understanding with Global Gap. Another one, we don't have it in Zambia, some in South Africa, some in Kenya. We don't have in Zambia. But if I to translate in Zambia, you'd be looking at, you know, our Bureau of Standards or places like ZARI. If I to have a memorandum of understanding with Global Gap, that would mean a Zambian business that wants to be a CB in this case would register directly with them and no need to go to the international market. And obviously, if that was to happen, that would reduce the cost of certification. Because if you have to, for example, fly somebody in from Kenya or Zimbabwe to look at your farm, it's obviously going to be a lot more expensive than if they're driving 1 hour from Osaka to your farm. So there you go. This is a bonus. I just gave you a free business opportunity there. There are no certification bodies in Zambia. So if for you business people out there, there's a new business you can open, and tell me about it. Always open for partnerships and such things. Okay, so I talked about the costs. So the system participation fee. So this table summarizes, it's in euros, and they call out the option for option 1 for the individual and option 2 for the group. And you can see that they have the base fee. So the base fee is the one they say. For example, I'll give you the example. Let's look at the first 2 columns there. It shows you that 60 euros is what you start with, and that's going to cover land that's 50 hectares or less. And for the individual, sorry, that's for the individual. And if you have more than 50 hectares, then they essentially start to charge €1.25 for each hectare. Okay, that's how they go up to a maximum of up to 100 hectares. Then above that 100 hectares, they start to charge you 0.25 euros per hectare. So it's incremental, and they have different ranges incrementally. If you are a group, like we are a group in Lusaka Avocado, they'll get the, so if Mr. Daka has 50 hectares, so 20, and Mr. Chwala has 100, you'd add all that up across all your membership. And then that's what Global Gap would decide as the basis for how much they should charge you for the system participation fee. So it's more like registration fee. This one you pay to them directly, and it's independent of the other costs that you have. All right. And this just summarizes what Global Gap is. It's a big organization, and once we become members, and let me see how much time we have. I'll show you a little bit about the website as well. There's a lot of information that you can get on their website to help you on this journey. Okay, so I believe this is the end of the presentation. What's left is I might demonstrate a little bit about what's on their website. But Mrs. Kalinda, I'll pause for questions if we have any questions here.
Thank you so much, Mr. Daka. I'm looking at the chat now. People haven't started putting in their questions. Let me have a quick look. We just had a question regarding whether it would be recorded, and I've sent the link. And then there's a question there about what will it take for us to a certification body in Zambia to set up, I think she's asking. Sorry, Ms. Chair, would you like to ask your question directly, please? If you just come off with the microphone, I'd appreciate it. You're on mute if you're talking, madam.
Linda, you're talking to me?
Yes, your question, please.
Okay, yeah, I've seen that when it comes to the certification body and inspection body, we don't have one in Zambia. What will it take for us to have one centered in Zambia? Because I see our neighboring countries have those institutions in their country. Then I wanted to understand what is covered versus uncovered. I think it was the second last, was it second last
slide?
Where there was, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Daka. Oh, yes, there we go.
Yes, covered versus uncovered. What are the exact?
Sorry, your network has just gone quiet. Mr. Daka?
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Over to you, sir.
Oh, sorry. So just what's the question there? Sorry, it cut out a little bit for me.
Okay, so she wanted to know what on that slide, what covered versus uncovered means, and then also what would it take for us to have a certification inspection body in Zambia? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So actually, so for production type, non-covered versus covered, I actually do not know that. So we can get back to you on that one. The difference in this table, what they mean by covered or not covered. Sorry, I don't have that one right now. In terms of the other question, how can we set this up? How can we have our own in Zambia? It's, if I go back to this slide, and also if we go on the website, they have clear steps here. It's quite straightforward. It's just that there's also money involved. For example, I think there's some like 5,000 euros that you'd have to pay to them every year to maintain your status as a certification body. But essentially, you go about it in two steps. You'd set up a business, Mr. Daka's business limited, registered with PACRA, and then you would apply through an accreditation body. So because we don't have one in Zambia today, you'd apply to one of them like in Zimbabwe, South Africa, or Kenya, and they would have the requirements that you have to meet for them for you to be accredited with them. But once you meet them and you get accredited with them, then at that point, you would have registered and you become a certification body in Zambia. And the good thing, I'll emphasize, it is a business opportunity, because if you're in Zambia and you're the first to go, basically anybody who wants to get certified in Zambia would be essentially coming through you. And as a business, the way you'd make your money there is, remember these fees, there's fee number 2, this the certification body service fees. So you would charge the farmers for you to come and inspect them and enter that information into the Global Gap system. You charge them travel, you do whatever your fees would be. That's how, as a business, you'd make your money there. And one more just to add there, as I said, it's also an opportunity for, I know we've got good, bright minds here, and we're people who are in touch with our Bureau of Standards, with ZARI, with various bodies that could help. We could start to lobby to say, hey, what if we had our own ZARI become an accrediting body that signs a memorandum of understanding with Global Gap? That way, if I have to set up that business in Zambia, I don't have to go to Zimbabwe to go and register with that body. I could just register with an accreditation body that's in Zambia. So 2 things there: opportunity at the individual level for you, and then a lobbying or partnering opportunity to have discussions with the likes of our Bureau of Standards or ZARI.
Thank you so much. Engineer Chiwala, did you want to come in?
Yes, thank you. For Daka, I'm just shell-shocked. I actually didn't know until tonight that we don't have a certification body. And the question is, how can this be? Because if you want to compete in the global family, this is the starting point.
Yes.
I'm actually very surprised. I'm very shocked. Because then the way the international people look at that, we are not prepared to trade globally. That's what it's implying.
Yes, we
So
do.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
Dr. Chimoga.
Yes.
No, I just wanted to add on what Engineer Chwala is saying. At some point, we're involved in a moringa plantation, and we needed to have some research on moringa, and we needed to certify the leaves before they could be taken to the closest we could take was South Africa, actually, for certification. And it was a lot of work. We had to first take it to a lot of bodies. We had to take it. ZARI first had to, not to certify, but just to, they had to write a letter that yes, they've seen our moringa field and all that. By the time it was getting to South Africa, we had really spent quite some money. Yeah, so we need that. Yeah, we do.
Yeah. No, I'm delighted, Rolinda. This is very helpful, and I think it's a turning point. The gears are turning. We need to take this route so that we can become a global participant, because this will open doors for not only the avocado industry, even in the vegetables and several other things that this country can produce. Yes. I'm grateful, Daka. This is powerful.
Excellent.
Thank you. Just to let you know, Mr. Daka, we do have a couple of members who are on the technical committee. Mr. Nkungulu and Mr. Chowa is on the call. So at some point, I'll take a look. If they come off their microphones, I'll let you know, then they'll be able to contribute. Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Daka.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So looking at the time, I'll just spend at most 5 minutes just to go to the Global Gap website, because I don't just want to share information. We don't want to give the fish. We want to show people where the fish is. So this website, essentially, I would say 90%, maybe even 100% of all the information you need to be certified, they have it somewhere in this website. So I want to highlight just a few that you could get to. For example, can you see my screen?
Yes, Mr. Daka, thank you.
Okay, good. So this is a home page. I just went, as I said, we're starting to line up with version 6. So you'd go into the Integrated Farm Assurance version 6 page. And from here, they have links to almost everything you need. For example, you want to understand what's new. There's a document for that. They have a webinar similar to what we're having here, but generic for them. And there's a Q&A. You could go to that and get more information. So sorry, I'll be scrolling up or down here. So I do apologize if I know sometimes that can be crazy. They have fees. They have the documents generator, which I'd like to talk about a little bit, because essentially what it comes down to is, I know I'm an avocado farmer. Okay, I know the standards at a high level, but I want something that I can start to use tomorrow to say, how do I know if I'm in compliance or not? So you could come to the document generation section to get your applicable checklist. So I select your language, English there. I click next. So they tell you 2 steps. Step 1, determine the relevant documents. Step 2, you can customize the checklist based on the principles and criteria that are applicable to you. So if I scroll down on this page, let me just move this out of the way, sorry. You select the first thing for us, avocado would select plants. I previously had selected fruits and vegetables, but just to show everybody, that's how it would be. You can choose what you want in the plant section. It's fruits and vegetables for us. Select certification option. You can select the individual option. So I'm part of Lusaka Avocado, so I'll say option 2 for me. Is the production process registered for parallel ownership? I say yes to that. Will this production process participate? So global GAP number, I say yes. I can read more about that because this was a high level. Okay. Once I select that, I click view documents. Oh, we're missing something. Oh yeah, which standard do you want to align to? So V6, I'll pick GFS. I click view documents. And basically it takes me to this page where these are Excel documents. It's got the checklist for fruits and vegetables. QMS, because it's a group. So in this case, this QMS, that's a quality management system. This is the one that Lusaka Avocado would get, and it's got a checklist of things that everybody has to be compliant with, and basically would start to implement that. So let me pick just this one as an example. Okay. Okay, can you see my Excel?
No, sir. We've got the view of the checklist, the web page.
Oh, Sorry.
You might have to unshare and then share again because you're sharing a window.
Yes, so let me stop the share. Let's share Excel. All right. Sorry, Mrs. Kalenda, can you see?
I can see your recommended documents page.
Okay.
Oh, yes,
okay.
now I can see it. Yeah, now you're bringing it up.
Okay, so when I bring this up, this is an example of an Excel document that it would generate for you that you can start to use as your checklist. It has a tab with the instructions that you could browse through. And then it's got the audit notes tab. You enter some information there, but I want to take to where, oh yeah, here. The second tab is got the principles and criteria. So this is where, for example, the first one, it says a procedure is in place to manage and control documents and records. That's an example where you're going to say yes, no, and you can see this is a measure. So it means you can't say, oh, I don't want to keep records. You have no choice. You need to have a system that you can demonstrate that you're able to do record keeping on your farm. And an auditor would come, they would ask for that evidence, and you're able to give a comment here on the answer. And there's several of them that should go through. And a continuous improvement plan is documented. So it's very useful. And the good thing is this one, once you land in this spreadsheet, you're able to print it out. You could start to look at it tomorrow and start to say, where am I in terms of my operation? And from there, you can start to say, what am I doing about it right away? So very actionable. Instead of just, staying with the theory, this brings it down to what you can do about it starting tomorrow, for example. So I wanted to share that as an example. The website has a lot more details. It's got this checklist. It's got additional information right from Global Gap. It's a little bit on the busy side. So, but I just thought, share for those who are able to, please, as next steps, I would say at the minimum, if you're able to, get onto that Global Gap website and start to explore there. Also know that at least as part of the Lusaka Avocado Cooperative, and I do realize this is ACUZ, so we have leaders from the other cooperatives, but what we're doing in the Lusaka is, as part of our technical committee, we've taken on the job of trying to distill all this and make it very easily consumable by our members. So come up with a simpler guideline that will be easier for our members to consume. So I would advise the other cooperatives to do the same. Have either, I don't know if you have a technical committee, you can even have a committee just for Global Gap certification to help figure out a way to present this to the wider membership. And with that, thank you very much for your attention. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with myself or Mrs. Kalinda, and we'll get you answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Daka. I appreciate it. I will just give a few seconds to see if anybody comes off microphone. If you've got a question for Mr. Daka, please can you come off the microphone, and then I will notice that you'd like to ask a question. We'll just give it a few seconds so people can unmute themselves. Okay. That is it. There's no questions on there. And I've checked on the YouTube channel. There are no questions at the moment. What I'd like to say to everybody is this is the second session of training for Avocado Cooperative Union of Zambia. Each time a link is sent out, feel free to forward to your cooperative, as Mr. Daka has explained, that it's for you and for your members as well. Now, what I wanted to show you was the presentation for when we are next having training. If you'd like to book training on the ACUZ training, this is the link for linking onto ACUZ. Feel free to screenshot it if you're on the phone, or if you'd like, you can just ask your chairman and they'll be able to send you a copy of this. Anybody who is part of ACUZ and is part of the cooperative and a cooperative member can join the ACUZ training through their chairman. We have the next sessions that are coming. We are running these sessions once a month. Now, we've done Global Gap today. The next one is on the 26th of April, Social Responsibility by Mrs. Daka. The 31st of May, we have got Mrs. Khan, who's from, not Siders, SIDA, but the Canadian one. So she has been working with NGOs and with the Canadian Embassy and the Canadian government, and she knows how to put together a proposal. She's been doing it for the past 25 years, so she's happy to come and talk to us about that. So please do let everybody else come in and join on how to find funding and how to write a proposal together. And then I will be looking at documentation, which Mr. Daka has just explained that we need to do for Global Gap and also just for running your farm. So if you have no more questions for us, Mr. Daka, thank you so much for your time. And thank you so much, all of you, for joining us today. Thank you so much. I am now going to log off onto the YouTube channel as well as onto the Zoom. Mr. Daka, do you have any last questions?
No questions. Just thanks to everyone for joining. Let's farm Zambia out of poverty. This is a great movement, so I encourage all of you to keep going, and let's get those Zambian avocados onto the international market.
Thank you. Thank you, Deborah Perry, for your comment.
Have a good night.
You said it was very educated, Mr. Daka. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.